My name is Eamonn Carey. I'm a partner at a VC fund called Terra Ventures. We invest in pre-seed and seed stage companies across the Nordics, Baltics, and Central and Eastern Europe. I've been investing in companies now for the last 7 or 8 years. Ran accelerator programs for Techstars, made a bunch of angel investments around the world, and prior to all of that was a founder myself. So always excited to meet new companies and hear about cool new things that are happening. I think people buy things from other people, and whilst for the last couple of years we've gotten used to going on sites like Amazon and lots of others and just clicking buy now, I think increasingly with brands, people want to have a little bit of a relationship. They want to know who the people behind it are. The first job that I had when I was in school and in college was in retail. I sold guitars, and people would come in, they knew they wanted to buy a guitar, but then if they decided between a Squire and a Fender, an Epiphone and a Gibson, a lot of that was about the conversation that they had with the salesperson going, this is the one that I use, this is why I think this is brilliant, this is why you should have this. So I think that person-to-person relationship is really important, and it's been gone from the retail world until live shopping started to become a thing. And if you look at the default way that people consume content nowadays, especially younger generations, it's YouTube, it's Instagram, it's TikTok, it's all of these channels where video is the default rather than text, and live shopping is just another add-on to that. I think a lot of consumer founders have watched the movie Field of Dreams and believed the idea of if you build it, they will come, which is just not the case, right? You need to have a really compelling product. You need to have a reason for people to come. You need to think about how, once you acquire a customer, you retain that person, how you build a relationship with them that's not just sending them endless transactional emails, right? So I think a lot of the best consumer brands that I've worked with and ones that I'm a customer of are ones where they've really thought about that community aspect to what they're doing. That it's not just the site that you go onto and click buy now, but actually one that you go onto and read some information, read their blogs, have a conversation with someone at the company, and that spreads out across all of their social media channels as well. So I think building a relationship with their customers is one of the biggest things that these direct-to-consumer brands do. It's very different to how the big brands owned by Unilever and P&G and all of the legacy brands have operated in the past. I think it's harder for brands to kind of move downstream, as it were, from retail to e-commerce. Just the way that they're set up, the way that their marketing budgets are set up, the way that the organization is structured, etc. It is a very different world. And I think what we've seen historically is a lot of those brands just go, let's just bang up a website and put a buy now button on it, and that's fine. Everyone will just discover us in the same way that they did when we had a store on on Oxford Street in London. So it is really, really hard for those legacy brands to kind of tap into this world, which is why you see so many big companies like AB InBev or Unilever or P&G buying all of these smaller brands, because not only are they buying a successful brand, they're buying the know-how and the knowledge and the connection that those brands have with their consumers, and they're hoping that that will filter through into their wider organization. So whilst, Budweiser or Cornflakes or any of these huge brands have enviable revenue streams, I think there is a world, probably the one that we're living in, that in the next 20 years, those brands will be disrupted by someone else coming in that has a more one-on-one, more unique relationship with their consumers, more trust and a more tailored product. I think there are a host of challenges coming as we see interest rates go up, as we enter into an environment where there's the possibility or probability of a recession. I think people will be a lot more careful about the money in their pocket and how they spend it and what they spend it on. So I think brands are really going to need to make sure, marketplaces, websites are going to make sure that they have a compelling reason for me to continue to spend my 10, 20, 50 pounds or euros or dollars every month. I think also there is an increasing amount of choice out there. And so again, this idea of how do you build a community, how do you build trust, how do you build engagement and retention with your customers is one of the really, really critical things that brands are going to have to do, and e-commerce sites are going to have to do. Because nowadays, if I want to buy any product, there are probably 20 or 30 sites competing for my attention. So how do you make sure that you are the one that I go to as a default and that I tell my friends about? And that's how you kind of compete in terms of that experience, that engagement, that relationship that you can have with your customers. But it's undeniable that there are tough times ahead for e-commerce companies. From a personal perspective, I think I trust smaller influencers an awful lot more than I trust someone who has 50, 80, 100 million followers, largely because those people are getting paid to post the stuff that they post. Whereas if you're someone that is, you know, I don't know, a small brand in the food space that has 5,000 followers, you're not getting anything for free. You're not getting paid. You're sharing the thing that you genuinely care about. And that I trust 100, maybe 1,000 times more. So I think for these kind of emerging direct-to-consumer brands, if you don't have huge budgets or you don't want to give 30% of your company to a Kardashian, then I think working with these kind of smaller micro or nano influencers who are really, really kind of sector specific or specific to the demographic that you're targeting, that's way more interesting. It's a little bit more work because you probably have to work with 50 or 100 of them to get the same reach, but the conversion rate for those people with the level of trust that they have with their followers and their community is going to be far, far higher. And also they're going to be far easier for you to reach. You're not going to have to go through some management agency to get the job done. So for me, I have an awful lot more trust in the kind of micro and nano influencers than I ever will in someone who's, you know, got 100 million followers, of whom 50 million are fake. I guess you're diversifying the risk a little bit, right? Because nowadays, anyone, you know, you can spend a lot of money working with one person, and then a week later, an article comes out about them, or they do something crazy, and their credibility is ruined, and you have this, you know, negative halo effect. Versus, yeah, working with 40, 50, 100 micro influencers, where if something goes wrong with one of them, that's not a single point of failure. So I think it's much more interesting to work with that pool of people in the same way that if you have any marketing budget, you're not going to allocate 100% of it to one Facebook ad with one message. You have to test and learn. You have to do a bunch of different things and see what converts. And I think that's exactly the same approach when it comes to working with influencers. It's a really interesting question, actually. I think one of the challenges that content marketing has had is that most of it is really shit, and very obviously paid promotional content, you know, and that goes right away from the supplements that you get in a newspaper to the articles that you read on a brand's website. I think the smart companies are thinking about it more as kind of, hey, how do we have content that's maybe not specific to like buy this object, buy these shoes, but if you're a shoe brand, you're maybe talking about running, right? And running tips more generally. If you're Yeti, you're probably talking about an outdoor lifestyle rather than specifically going, hey, the benefits of this cooler are A, B, and C. The people who want to buy that will do that research. But if you're trying to attract a new audience in, I think you need to think about, again, how do you build that relationship with them? How do you build that trust? How do you give them something that's worthwhile, that I might then go, hey, I'll share this on Twitter and become, you know, a mouthpiece for your company, regardless of whether I think I'm doing it or not. So I think there is definitely a role for content marketing. I think just the way that a lot of brands think about it is as a very blunt instrument of like, well, we might as well just make an ad, but make this one 600 words long instead of tiny. And instead, you've got to think about it in a whole different way of like, why would I read that, right? Well, you've got to kind of start with the end in mind. If your goal is to get me to read something and then think, like, make a purchase consideration, well, first you have to think about what is it that I want to read, right? I don't want to read 800 words of marketing copy. I want to read 5 tips on how to get a better pace in my 5K or in my marathon if I'm thinking about a shoe brand. So I think there is an opportunity, and I say this as a former journalist, I think there is an opportunity for content creators to kind of go, hey, we need to think about this in a different way, that we're not doing a PR puff story. We're actually kind of creating something that is a valuable piece of content and is something that I will not only watch or read, but also something that I will tell other people about.